So like I said, my name is Scott Jessen. I am the Director of Product Development with Tennant Products. And today we're actually going to be going over the microbiome specifically and diving into immunity and some digestive support. A couple of weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the IPA World Summit. It's the International Probiotics Association World Summit. So they had some of the great minds in probiotics and prebiotics that showed up, biochemists and doctors and scientists across the board. So I wanted to share some of the data and information that I received from them. We're going to talk about prebiotics, postbiotics, probiotics, parabiotics, and symbiotics, all of those specifically. We'll go over a couple of the trends and what's actually happening in prebiotics and probiotics. We'll talk about microbiome and illness, what actually happens to our microbiome when that happens. We'll discuss our probiotic formula, why, what's good about it, and how it can be used, gut boot camp, and then wrap things up with stomach acid and iodine. Kind of crazy that we're talking about probiotics, prebiotics, and iodine and stomach acid, but we'll get into all that. So, and then at the end of this, we will wrap things up. So the big question here is, how important is bacteria in the human body? And one thing that was kind of shocking to me was that the human body consists of 30 trillion cells and 38 trillion microbial cells. That was a little alarming to me. So I guess the question is, are we really cellular, or are we microbial or bacterial, however you want to state that? Kind of an alarming number. The bottom line from this conference was that the International Probiotics Association and Probiotic Americas, which is a bunch of different companies and manufacturers that were putting things together, they met to discuss what's happening for the cutting edge science and market analysis, key regulatory developments, make sure that everybody's on the same page. And there are a couple of things that came out of this conference and some things that I learned, and I wanted to share those with you. So some of the key microbial terms, we're going to be talking about prebiotics and probiotics today, but some other things that are going to be coming in the future. I wanted to make sure that we're all well aware of those. So prebiotic, also known as fiber, this is the food for probiotics in the digestive tract. Then we have probiotics. Everybody knows about probiotics. These are the beneficial bacteria or the good bacteria in the gut. Then we have postbiotics. This is kind of an interesting thing. So this is not necessarily living or non-living probiotics. It's the metabolite matter from that. And there have been a bunch of clinical studies that have actually come out that show that the metabolite matter from the probiotics and prebiotics that may have been mixed together, whether they are living or not, can have a beneficial effect in some specific areas of health. And then we have parabiotics. This is the newest form. It's heat-killed, non-viable probiotics. And when administered in specific amounts, they actually provide a beneficial health effect. An interesting concept here is that a lot of times when you get sick and you end up in the hospital, then folks will prescribe antibiotics. And what the folks at this conference were hypothesizing is that, in the next 5 to 10 years, we may actually have folks that are going to be using probiotics to help treat some of the specific illnesses instead of antibiotics to kill things. Kind of an interesting thing. And then lastly, we have symbiotics. So this is a mixture of prebiotics and probiotics, but both of them have a beneficial effect on their own, and when put together, they have an even greater effect. This is actually, this matches Dr. Tennant's probiotic formula. We'll get into that a little bit more. But one of the big key things that came out of this is that we can support and manipulate the microbiome and help specifically with cravings, emotions, and immunity by supporting it with the appropriate flora and fauna in the digestive tract. So let's dive into some of the trends. This is data that was shared from Lumina Intelligence. They're an AI company that has focused on the probiotic industry. And what's interesting is that they took some data and shared it, and it was kind of alarming. So I wanted to share this with you just to share the interest of probiotics and what's actually happening in the market. So they actually looked at probiotic supplements and online engagement in the Americas, and what they found is a dramatic increase. So they looked at 2017, 18, and 19, and then in 2020, as you know, we had the pandemic, and all kinds of things were happening, but online engagement was skyrocketed. So across the Americas, it was up 210% across the board. the US was actually 219% increase in 2020 over 2019. So kind of a crazy thing, huge interest in probiotics. The other thing, when we take a look at this and we look at things from the United States is obviously the largest contributor to online engagement, but Canada and Mexico are developing quickly. And if you look at this, the dotted lines there actually show the second quarter growth. The surprising thing to me was that there's a growing interest in probiotics, specifically with synbiotics. And about 62% of the probiotic supplements on the market in 2020 actually were synbiotics with prebiotics and probiotics. Now, one thing I want to point out is that the probiotics had to have one probiotic and had to have one prebiotic. And we'll get into that here in just a moment. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out, these were the specific topics of the specific reviews. So inflammation, immunity, if you look in the center of the screen there, immunity and digestion, and then just to the left, inflammation are the targets. So that if we're looking at, what are people actually searching for? What are they looking for? Probiotics and inflammation, immunity and digestion. And those are exactly what we're talking about here today. So I wanted to just share that with you. The other interesting thing is that the number of searches and reviews has actually increased between 1,500 and 2,000% for these. So kind of interesting data, but bottom line is that people are interested in probiotics and prebiotics now. So when we dive into this and we start thinking about the diversity of the microbiome, our microbiome is a lot like a garden. If you imagine a beautiful garden with lots of vibrant colors and fruits and vegetables, this garden is incredibly beautiful, but it takes a lot of work, right? There's weeding, there's water, there's sunlight, attention, and care. I know personally, I don't have a green thumb, and I'm fantastic at growing weeds, and it's a lot of work to actually keep a garden up. But just like our own microbiomes, when our gardens are not watered or cared for, then the garden quickly changes and becomes full of weeds and overgrown. This is exactly what happens in our gut. So our microbiome requires similar care, attention, and nutrition. It needs good food, which are the probiotics, fertilizer, which is the food for the probiotics, known as prebiotics, and then support. So something to help get rid of the weeds and help detox the gut, if you will. When things are not cared for, dysbiosis can occur, or an imbalance of bacteria in the gut. And this can cause additional changes in food cravings, irritability, mood, emotions, or even stress management. And the studies have actually shown us that those with more diverse microbiomes have increased ability to come back from illness and fend off pathogens. So then you say, okay, well, great, that's fantastic. We know that things need to be diverse, but do we really need to replace any of these specific microbes? Well, the crazy thing is that we live in an industrialized society where everything is manufactured, including our food. And we have GMO foods, GMO crops. They can have a negative impact on what we eat. Pesticides, weed killer, or glyphosate or glyphosate can have a significant negative impact on that. That does this by killing the bacteria in the body, specifically the lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. That removes that bacteria necessary to create the enzymes to break down the food. And when that happens, then you have additional proteins in the gut, and this can lead to autoimmune issues or inflammatory issues, including leaky gut. The other thing is that foods that are cooked in, added sugars or, filled with additives or trans fats can cause additional damage to microbes in the digestive tract and also eliminate the beneficial bacteria. The other thing is, what's interesting is that as we age, our immune system also ages and it becomes more immune to the infections of diversity, but our microbiome becomes less diverse. And so it's interesting as we grow and as our bodies continue to adapt and we get older, our microbiomes can become less diverse. And the studies have shown us that probiotics can benefit by helping to proliferate a more diverse and beneficial bacteria in the gut when they're not available in the body or in the diet. So there are a couple of things that happen there when we have to do that. So then, okay, well, that's great, Scott, but what happens when we get sick? Well, we have the microbiome and we have a wonderful garden going, right? And then all of a sudden there seems to be an imbalance. We may have eaten something, we may have encountered something, we may have had an additional pathogen or a virus that has come in, and this creates an imbalance. And when this happens, the body creates a cytokine storm, and the body loses the good bacteria and the pathogens take over. If you think about a great example of this is if you think about Hurricane Katrina, right? There was crazy looting after Hurricane Katrina. Things were fine before the hurricane. Everything was living their normal lives, kind of like what happens in the bacteria when you're going about your daily life. Then the hurricane comes, the normal population leaves, and the looters and looters' friends show up and take over. That's kind of what happens in our microbiome when we have these pathogens that actually come in and take over. And then it takes a while for the regular beneficial bacteria to come back. But when the beneficial bacteria comes back, then the pathogen can go away. And studies have actually shown that if you use large quantities of a specific type of beneficial bacteria, they can target specific antibodies or specific pathogens, specific pathogens or specific viruses. And that's where the thought is coming from, that we may actually be able to use probiotics instead of antibiotics in the future. So what happens in our bodies are that we have strong regulatory cells, or T cells, which help boost the immune system. And the clinical studies have shown that lactobacillus increases the strength of these specific cells. So lactobacillus, if you remember, is one of the things that weed killer actually kills. And it's also one of the things that we want to make sure that we can help proliferate, so we can create the enzymes to break down those foods, and we don't end up with the inflammatory issues or the autoimmune issues or additional proteins in the gut. So we know that replacing probiotics can help repair and heal the gut. Probiotics can help with lung and cardiovascular disease, specifically pneumonia. And there are over 80 clinical studies that have been shown to have a positive effect with using lactobacillus only. It's kind of a crazy thing. The other side of this is that published in Nature, which is an international journal of science, these prebiotics and probiotics when given to infants in rural India and showed a decreased death rate and increased brain function. The whole purpose of this study was to figure out how to help treat respiratory infections, but this was, the other two things were the side effects. So the probiotics reduce the opportunity for respiratory infections. Kind of crazy, huh? So the question is, well, if we end up with a cytokine storm, or we end up with things that will help damage that specific bacteria, then what can we do to help with that? Well, there's a product that we carry called Dr. Tennant's Microbiome Support Formula, which is actually designed with the specific intent of helping to support the digestive tract. So as we mentioned, we need food for our microbiome, we need support, and we need the fertilizer, right? Well, this is the support. So if we think about what happens if we have a GMO or if we have glyphosate in our system, then we can end up with additional inflammatory issues, additional autoimmune issues, additional proteins, and additional toxins that we're going to have to be able to rid. Well, microbiome support is designed specifically to help support that, and specifically target leaky gut with additional glutathione, colostrum, glutamine, and specifically target it with ingredients that are proven to support that intestinal wall integrity and the endothelial type function. It helps specifically with stress management support and adaptogens. We know that if we're chronically stressed, or if we're in that constant fight or flight state, it can actually trigger specific hormones that can throw off things in the gut specifically, and so the microbiome support can help reset that. And then it has ingredients proven to promote the immune system and support strengthening the immune response. And modulation in the GI tract and throughout the body. Now, the interesting thing here is that we were actually able to update this. So we were able to add BGF Immune, whole vitamin C, vitamin D, increase the amount of zinc and selenium. And there's no additional cost that comes along with this, but it's a great opportunity to actually provide additional immune support to the gut, because the more we look at this, the more we actually study the gut, the more we realize that we need additional support with that. And then, of course, a bunch of specific fibers to help support that. Now, we don't actually have probiotics in here, but we do have a bunch of different fibers, several different types of fibers to help with the specific food supply. So then the other thing is, okay, well, what else needs to happen in the gut? Well, we have the microbiome and we have the mycobiome. And the mycobiome is actually the fungal version of the microbiome within the microbiome. And so it only makes up about 3% of the microbiome, but because the fungal molecules are so much larger, they still play an active and engaged role in this. So yes, they help the body manage with candida and normal fungus and yeast balance, but they really help support a healthy flora balance in addition to helping detox. And along with bacteria, fungus and yeast play an integral role in the body's digestion system and a critical role in detoxification. Oddly enough, one of the things that actually counteracts glyphosate is, or weed killer, is fungus. And so sunlight and fungus are two of those things. So if you are encountering some additional GMOs or you're encountering some additional products, having appropriate balance of fungus can certainly help within the gut. Kind of a cool thing. And then if we wrap things up, I mentioned lactobacillus and bifidobacterium are the two kind of targets that are hit specifically by GMO or weed killer. And lactobacillus and bifidobacterium are the two main probiotics that are covered in clinical studies for health benefits. These are incredibly large categories, which is why we have several different types of each. And the studies have shown us that having a wide variety of the specific probiotics instead of hundreds of billions of CFUs or colony forming units actually helps improve the diversity and proliferation of beneficial bacteria in the gut rather than having one specific thing if we're not trying to target a specific pathogen. The same is true for probiotics, for prebiotics. And so if you have one type of prebiotic, then you have one type of food, and different bacteria prefer different types of food. And so we want to make sure that we're able to provide a wide variety of prebiotics. As I mentioned, that 62% in the market data earlier, a lot of the prebiotics on the market will offer one form of a prebiotic, which is great for one type of bacteria or a couple different types of bacteria, but we literally have hundreds of different types of bacteria in the gut. So we want to make sure that we're able to support that variety. And so we actually, in this formula for daily support, we want to make sure that we have a variety of prebiotics, a variety of probiotics, that they are clinically studied and set up for optimal health benefits. And that's why when you look at this, you see a smattering of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium across the board, including several different types of prebiotic fibers. So if we take a look at this whole system, we put the whole thing together, right? We need something, when we're talking about the microbiome, we need something that's going to help clean the gut and support the gut, right? That's the microbiome support. So everything from Immunocyst micron to colostrum, glutathione, prebiotics, and more specifically set up to help support the gut with inflammation, detox, clear things out so that you have a healthy slate so you can go in and with good fertilizer, good food, and beneficial bacteria, and lay the groundwork for a healthy digestive tract. So we have the probiotic formula, which actually has the pre and probiotics, in addition to the delivery system, which is a time-release capsule. We're using Capsugel DR caps for that. And then we have fungal detox, right, which is the microbiome support. So you have the microbiome support and then the mycobiome support. So really, it's that full spectrum GI support that we're looking at with this, which will help support with leaky gut and GMOs or any of the issues that we might have with the synthetic foods that we might be eating. Or if we need to help proliferate some more of that bacteria. And the probiotic, again, absolutely fantastic for daily maintenance. So Dr. Tennant's Gut Boot Camp provides the support for the microbiome, the mycobiome, and the support to help keep a healthy digestive tract. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when we start talking about the digestive tract, we rarely talk about stomach acid, but stomach acid is absolutely critical. And in order to make stomach acid, we need iodine. So you'll say, okay, well, why are we talking about iodine right now? Well, iodine is required for stomach acid. And Dr. Brownstein says that iodine is found in each of the trillions of cells in the body, and without adequate iodine levels, life itself is not possible. Well, not only do our cells need it, but our body needs it because it's having the amount of stomach acid is necessary to trigger a bunch of different functions within the digestive tract and a bunch of different signals that allow the digestive tract to function appropriately. Now, there are some cofactors that are required for stomach acid. You need iodine, you need vitamin C, B1, and zinc. Fulvic acid also helps the iodine transport the body, or transport to each of the cells in the body. One interesting thing about this, and this was actually brought up at the conference, folks had a couple questions about SIBO. And they said, hey, great, well, what are you doing to actually treat SIBO? And the thought was, well, the big thing that you want to do with SIBO, if you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, is that you want to make sure that you can increase your stomach acid. Because if you have that bacteria that grows up through the large intestine, up in through the small intestine, and can even get into the stomach if the stomach acid isn't there, you want to make sure that you can actually increase the amount of stomach acid to help with that. So SIBO can happen with overeating, not clearing the colon, right? Any of the things that we were talking about earlier, if you don't have the enzymes present to break down the specific proteins. If you have a lack of stomach acid, if you're on antacids, protein pump inhibitors, those things, they can actually decrease the amount of stomach acid in your system, reflux meds, and SIBO can actually take hold, and the bacteria and microbes can grow from the small intestine and work its way up in the stomach if the acid levels are too low. So the first thing is, yes, you can treat it with specific microbiome support, but really, if you want to get to the source of it, you need to increase the amount of stomach acid. The key thing that was mentioned here is that if SIBO exists, don't use prebiotics or fiber. It'll actually feed the bacteria and can make it worse. Instead, focus on increasing the stomach acids. When the levels of stomach acid are increased, SIBO should reduce and allow normal digestive function, and probiotic and prebiotic use can continue. So kind of an interesting thing with this. But we need to make sure that we have both iodine and the cofactors present to be able to use this. So Dr. Tennant will say, well, you can take iodine by itself, but you need cofactors like zinc and selenium to work correctly. Part of that is because we need that in stomach acid. You can't just substitute iodine by itself and get the results that you need. So the Lugol's Iodine Plus capsules actually work incredibly well with all of the cofactors that not only support iodine metabolism, but also increase levels of stomach acid. Okay, now if we think about digestion, we think about bacteria, we think about microbes. We've talked a little bit about stomach acid, but then we also have enzymes present. And what's interesting about this is that if we don't have all of the bacteria present, the bacteria are actually the helpers that help break down the enzymes, or will help create the enzymes to help break things down so that we can process proteins and digest those proteins appropriately. So we need to make sure that we have the enzymes present. Well, if we don't have the enzymes present, then we're not going to be able to digest the food that we eat. So Dr. Tennant will say, you can eat a perfect diet, but you're still starving if you can't digest it. Kind of simple, huh? In other words, you can go spend as much money you want at Whole Foods or Mother's Market, wherever you would like to go, and have these amazing meals. But if you can't actually pull any of the nutrients out of that food by breaking down that food with the specific enzymes, and you can't do that because you don't have the specific bacteria to help create those enzymes in the first place, then it can cause some problems. Now, if we remember right, if we have GMOs or glyphosate or any of the specific synthetics that we have ingested, whether it's the toxins that we may have ingested, those can all affect the bacteria, which then affect the enzymes, which then affect the proteins that we can digest. So we actually have Dr. Tennant's digestive enzyme formula, which helps start the digestive process earlier, helps more foods completely digest, and helps replace those enzymes that are lost. You say, okay, well, do we really need to replace these enzymes? Well, the reality is that if you cook foods, then you're actually cooking those specific enzymes out of the foods, and the enzymes can be lost through that process. And then as I mentioned earlier, not only does the diversity of the microbiome decrease with age, but so does the ability to produce the additional enzymes so that we can digest that. So we want to make sure that we have the stomach acid present, the digestive enzymes present, and they're, if you think about the digestive tract, it's essentially a tube, right? That goes from the top of our body all the way throughout, right? And it's one big tube with a bunch of complicated processes and a bunch of complicated parts and a bunch of things that are happening in the middle of it. And there are various pH conditions all throughout the GI tract. And we've just spent the last 20 minutes sitting right here talking about some of the specific processes with this. And so what I want to point out is that we want to make sure that you have the digestive enzymes present to be able to, if our body isn't creating those enzymes, we want to make sure that we have those present so that we can actually digest the foods that we eat, in addition to the difficult to digest foods like gluten, dairy, grains, nuts, seeds, sugars, beans, broccoli, bacon, whatever your forte. I take these whenever I have bacon. It seems to work. And so, it actually has every known digestive enzyme in it so that we can digest everything that we eat. And the way that we actually create these is we'll take the protein and then use that to break that down and create the enzymes so that we can have the specific enzymes in a capsule that you can take, and then your body will be able to process this. So if you can't create it, then we'll actually give you the process so that you can formulate that. So in summary, when we dive into digestion health, then we know that prebiotics and probiotics matter, right? It's pretty cool what they're starting to do with some of the science on that, with prebiotics and probiotics, and even some of the metabolites that come from both prebiotics and probiotics. We know that a healthy gut is a diverse gut, and the more diverse it is, the better chance you have for increasing your immunity when it does actually hit something. We know that bacteria plays a critical role in digestion and creating those enzymes in addition to overall health. We know that stomach acid is absolutely essential, and that helps trigger specifically what's going on in our digestive tract. And GMO or antibiotics can actually decrease the diversity of the microbiome. It is possible to resod the lawn, right? Or replant that garden. You can restore the balance the body needs to help fight infections, maintain diversity, and increase immunity. You just need the right ingredients to be able to do that. Pathogens can be overcome with high-dose, single-serving forms like lactobacillus if enough are present, but they may not necessarily be good for daily maintenance. These should obviously be under the care of your healthcare practitioner. For daily maintenance, we want as many diverse forms of probiotics as possible. So diverse forms of probiotics are key, not necessarily the more CFUs or colony forming units, along with the probiotics and prebiotics to help maintain that health. So I want to thank you for your time. I know that your time is incredibly valuable. In the end, it is your body, it's your health, and it's your vitality. And we believe that it's your body, it's your life, and ingredients matter. You are what you eat. And I'm living proof that the body never forgets how to heal itself, and when it runs correctly, it does heal itself. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. I really sincerely appreciate you being here, and I hope that you found this somewhat informative. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.